Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering creativity. I'm Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Monica Benson, who serves as Director of Education and Community Engagement at the Chicago Sinfonietta. Monica, welcome to the show.
Hi, Erin. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I am so excited to talk to you. Obviously, Sinfonietta is amazing, one of our great creative partners, but is not an icon just alone in Chicago, but also known nationally in terms of the work that the orchestra and the institution does and has, and it's just an extraordinary impact. So I am so excited to talk to you. So I thought first, right, just kind of given your role, if you could kind of share what falls under your purview and what's the breadth of what Sinfonietta does as it relates to education and community engagement.
Sure. So I oversee all of our education and community programming. So that is pretty much anything that doesn't involve the full orchestra on stage. We have education programming that includes a private lesson program and a group coaching program. So our musicians go in as teaching artists to Chicago public schools and schools in DuPage County here in the suburbs. And they teach private lessons, they teach group lessons. And then we have another program where we do in-school education concerts. So for that program, the students usually see every group of the orchestra in the small chamber group, and they get to learn about the instruments and more. They get to learn more about the Sinfonietta.
That
More
is, oh yeah, no, please, yeah, totally.
And as far as our community programming goes, we identify specific partners, usually trying to tie them to our concerts, our main stage concerts in some way. And so we do like community concerts, different partnerships, things like that.
It's absolutely awesome work, and there's quite a breadth to that. And before I get into kind of how you structure those partnerships and further them, I was just wondering, is kind of my sense of Chicago, my parents, my adoptive parents grew up there. And our youngest son goes to DePaul there in Chicago, so I have a limited right sense of Chicago there often for various partnerships. My sense is there's a lot of different communities reflecting different cultures and priorities and so on and so forth. And so just wondering, given the breadth of the work that falls under your purview, do you have an approach or an ethos to that broad collection of communities and their priorities? How do you approach that?
Sure. So what we've done this year, and this is new for us, is we've identified a specific partner neighborhood. So we also have an artist in residence. His name is Chicago historian Dilla Thomas. I don't know if you've ever seen his social media posts. They're very interesting. He kind of talks about like everything hip came from Chicago, and he does like these really cool like short history videos about like St. Patrick's Day, like dyeing the river green, or like different basketball teams that have been really successful in Chicago that you wouldn't have like known about, like a high school team or something like that, or like some small business that is known nationwide but is actually from Chicago. So he does these really cool Chicago history videos. But he's actually our artist in residence this year, and he has a bus company that does tours of the Bronzeville neighborhood. So our partner neighborhood this year is Bronzeville. So we're kind of like tying that into like our artist in residence. We're trying to get our partners that we bring to the concert hall, because we always have like these really neat audience engagement aspects to our concerts. So trying to bring them into the concert hall to like identify small businesses in those neighborhoods, arts organizations in those neighborhoods. And that's like been pretty effective because, like you said, Chicago is so like there's just so many neighborhoods. So really spotlighting a neighborhood per season is a new strategy that we've just developed this year, and we're going to continue to utilize going forward.
Awesome. Fantastic. So when it gets to this work, right, it seems like, and I know there are many people watching who look at various community partnerships that they're working on for their own institutions, and that no matter what, what's vital are partnerships, right? Like that's how you do work in community. So just wondering, do you have kind of a set of best practices or a framework that enables you to approach these partnerships in such a way that where the Sinfonietta has been able to be so successful at having these partnerships?
Honestly, the best advice that I can give for partner cultivation is just listening to your partner, because usually we are partnering with other arts organizations or other nonprofits or small businesses, and everyone's staff is usually pretty small. And we're a nonprofit also, so our whole entire staff, we wear multiple hats. So the the strongest partnerships usually come from just kind of like the one-on-one conversations with like whoever my counterpart would be at the partner organization, and just realizing like what is actually doable and coming with very flexible ideas to say like this is what we could possibly do, but we're open to suggestions, or maybe we can build this out in another year if you have more staff capacity, or just like that constant communication is really the best way for those partnerships to develop and to flourish, honestly, because everyone is so, I like their bandwidth is, especially with those smaller nonprofits and groups, it's just the bandwidth is always an issue.
Absolutely. And so when you approach them, do you have kind of like your own independent, Chicago Sinfonietta goals that you kind of want out of the partnership, or do those shift as the partnership develops? Kind of curious how you do that, and are there times when you're like, okay, we want to, invest in this partnership because it'll kind of deliver X for our institution, or just wondering kind of how you relate your own goal setting to kind of the partnerships that you develop.
Sure. Our main goal is always audience development and getting as many people in the concert hall as possible, like people who have never been able to see a concert due to like transportation is actually a really huge issue in the city. Like we have students in our partner like ed programs that they live like 4 or 5 miles from the city and they've never been downtown. So that's a huge transportation is a huge barrier. So just kind of like audience development is always the thing, and like listening to partners too of like what is it that keeps your audience from coming to a concert, and if it's not possible to come up with like brainstorm some kind of solution with them, like finding a way that we can also be beneficial for their organization also, so maybe that's bringing music to their audiences or their community. So yeah, audience development is usually the main one, but there's so many more avenues open just that are developed through those conversations.
Absolutely. And also, Chicago Sinfonietta has such a deep history relating to diversity, and so many impacts and historical impact and significance. And just wondering, kind of moving forward, is there any kind of thoughts or sense that you have or Sinfonietta has kind of thinking about moving forward as it relates to diversity, both projecting it externally to the community and or how the Sinfonietta is viewing it itself?
Sure. We've always had really diverse programming from the very beginning. That was something that Maestro Paul Freeman like was very, very, very important to him, is like making sure that not only the audience or not only the musicians on stage reflect the community for which they're performing, but also the programming, and really elevating artists that have historically been underrepresented in the classical music world. Another thing that Sinfonietta is makes Sinfonietta really unique is we try to be a community kind of like hub for people. So even though Chicago is very big, there is kind of this lack of like third spaces for people to meet. So like you can meet at coffee shops, but you have to buy a coffee to be there. You can meet at a library, but also like there's limits on what you can do there because of like sound and noise. So kind of what we're looking forward to is kind of creating this sense of community where people can come and meet at the concert hall and they can come and like have this community that they see like every, I don't know, every month when we have concerts, you know? So we're really trying to kind of push that as like, come meet us at the concert hall, come meet your neighbors, come meet our musicians, meet our staff. Like you are welcome here, no matter like your race, gender, socioeconomic background, like everyone is welcome. And that's the whole point of the pay what you can ticketing model that we have. So it's like we're hoping to take the cost of like the barrier to entry for cost out of the equation for people.
It's absolutely wonderful. And of course, just the ethos of the organization itself is obviously just so dear to the community and nationally. So unfortunately, we are just about out of time, but I always like to ask of all my guests, right? This work, obviously, it's so rewarding and fulfilling, and the impact with education and young people and the partnerships, seeing that impact in communities. But there's got to be tough days. There's days where whatever obstacles arise. And just wondering, as a leader, as an administrative leader, are there any methods or mechanisms that you have to kind of get you past those toughest of days?
Sure. It always helps me being in the field. So if I'm having like a hard day, I always try to see like who is out in the field, who is like what group is out right now playing for someone, and I try to go out and actually watch the performance or watch our artists work with the students, because then you can actually see what you're doing, like how that's coming to fruition, and that's really helpful. And art is just it touches people in ways that we will never know. So that's the hard part about being an administrator is like you're creating it, but you don't always get to see it. So I may try to make sure that I am going out and seeing what our musicians are doing in the communities, and even talking to the people who are attending those community performances is also really important too, just because you get to hear from them, like you hear their stories, and you like for example, we had a group play at a coffee shop down in Englewood, and there was one lady who was there and she's like, I would love for you to come play at the senior residence where I live. And so we sent out a group and they played over the summer, and then their senior life coordinator sent me an email, and she with like a picture of all of these ladies, and she said they all went to a Sinfonietta concert, but it was like these small touch points with the community that really kind of keeps you going.
Monica Benson, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for everything that you do, and thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.